Thursday, December 3rd. By our bylaws, the first meeting in December includes an organizational meeting. So it should be brief, but we put that ahead of our regular agenda. All right, first item on the organizational meeting is the election of officers. And by our bylaws, we need to elect a chairman first. Are there nominations for chairman?
I nominate.
Thank you. Okay, are there any further nominations? All right, nominations are closed. Our bylaws require that we vote by ballot. So if all board members could go to their email, find the ballot that Lucille sent and just text or email it to her. I'll give you a couple minutes. Thank you. Lucille, did you get them?
Yeah, I've got 3 right now. I'm just waiting for, I guess, one more.
Did we lose Glenn?
Glenn? We did.
Let me see if he's in the waiting room. There he is. Welcome back.
Yeah, I don't know
Glenn.
what. Yeah.
Were you able to, can you just send Lucille an email?
Yeah, I'm trying to. I'm not quite sure how to do that. I minimized my thing there. And
Okay.
so I'm going to send that back, which I think I did. Trying to, at least.
Glenn, is it easier if I text you and you text me your vote?
No, I think you got it. I hope you got it. Did you? It should have come back.
Hold on, let me check. Yep, I got it, Glenn.
Okay, good.
Okay,
All right.
I've received all the votes. 5 votes for Deborah Lowe.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Deborah, my apologies. I don't know what happened. I got shut out. Everybody
Hey, it's okay. I heard the count, so
okay.
we're all good. So thank you. Thank you so much, everybody.
Okay.
All right. Are there nominations for vice chairman?
I nominate Glenn Hemmerly.
Are there further nominations? All right, so we need to do this. Nominations are closed, and if everyone could send their ballot to Lucille for vice chairman.
I think I figured out how to do it.
Yeah, I've got you, Glenn.
Okay.
I've got everybody, so it's 5 votes for Glenn.
All right, thank you, everybody, and congratulations, Glenn.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Are there nominations for secretary? I nominate, I'm sorry, let me do it. I'd like to nominate Gretchen Jeans.
I'll second.
All right, I don't think we need one, but thanks.
Okay.
All right, so let's send that ballot in as well.
All right, go there. Inbox.
Did you get them, Lucille?
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I'm missing one. No, I've got them all. 5. 5 votes for Gretchen.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone, and congratulations, Gretchen. Okay, we have the officers set for the next year. On to the consent agenda. This includes appointment of legal counsel, district medical advisor, and designation of signatories. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thanks, Glenn. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Gretchen. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Consent agenda is approved. And thanks, Jen, for pointing out the earlier the typos, so thank you. Meeting dates for the 2021 remaining school year. Meeting dates, and again, this does not preclude special meetings. So is there a motion to approve our meeting calendar?
So moved.
Thanks, Gretchen. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Glenn. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. The next is approval of our 2021 committee assignments and liaison roles. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved.
All right, thanks, Gretchen, and thanks, Glenn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, the rest is informational procedures for efficient board meeting. Well, sometimes we're okay and sometimes not so okay. So we'll take it under advisement. All
We
right.
do our best.
I'm going to adjourn the organizational meeting and call to order our regular Thursday, December 3rd Board of Education meeting. Have people gotten a chance to review the agenda?
Yes.
And if so, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thanks, Glenn. All in favor? I'm sorry. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Gretchen. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Lucille, are there comments from the public that you received? Okay. Consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
I'll
Who did
second.
Not sure who did that.
Ruth.
Jumping around. Gretchen, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Glenn, all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Reports. It's been quiet, so I have no board chairs report except to thank everyone for voting for the officers this year. So thanks for everyone's support. Really appreciate that. It's an honor to serve. Superintendent.
Great. I have a lengthy report, so buckle up. There's just a even in a short vacation week, there's a lot to cover. So I'll try to proceed as quickly as I can. And feel free to just interrupt with any questions. First, I just want to inform the board, this past Tuesday, we held a follow-up session with Dr. Andrew Gerber, who is the president and medical director at Silver Hill Hospital. We had about 30 parent participants, and Dr. Gerber provided information and recommendations about monitoring the social and emotional well-being of children. We'll have the video. We recorded the session, so the video will be on our website for any parents or other community members who would like to access it. I just thought I'd share just a couple of Dr. Gerber's chief insights. First, he noted, and we all know this, that, there are many who are struggling for many different reasons during this time, and the pandemic has the effect of amplifying those struggles. And so, consequently, it's important that we check in especially with our children and, within our children, especially if we have adolescent or, high school age kids. Dr. Gerber also, took the time to really reinforce that, parents are the best experts when it comes to knowing and understanding their children. And, I thought he did a fine job in making the point that as the first best experts, they also should trust their instincts. And, as a father of 5, I took that feedback very well. And so, his point was, your kid's best. And, if you're seeing something, if you're seeing a behavior change, or if you think, something is not quite right, trust your instincts. And if something is off, it's probably so. Don't hesitate to seek some support. And that was kind of his last, kind of chief point. And that was, none of us should be afraid to seek support, whether it's for ourselves or in service to our children, because of the time we're in. We could all probably use a little extra support, and there is no harm that could come of it. So he really reinforced that message. We spent about an hour, and there were a few questions from parents. But like I said, the session will be on the video. And, I want to thank Kim Zemo, who, has been, working with some mental health providers here in the region, was able to facilitate that. And we'll continue to come together and just kind of monitor, where we are as a community, and continue to provide, follow-up sessions and, supports as we're able to. So last night, Fran and, go ahead, Glenn.
Yeah, the survey work that Kim is doing, is Dr. Gerber in tune with that, or is he also part of that process, or is he familiar with it or supportive of it?
Would be supportive of it, but he has not been involved with that as far as I'm aware.
Okay.
We had a local group, make some recommendations.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So, switching gears, but still in response to, some parental questions and needs. Fran Kompar and a team of our teachers put together a session last night that was very, very well received. It was timely. I heard some wonderful feedback. The topic was, Schoology and supporting students at home. And so I just want to take a moment and thank Fran. Fran, like so many others, is one of our unsung heroes through this pandemic. She is, when people need something, she reaches out and she responds immediately, and always does a very, very good job in responding to questions and needs. And last night was no surprise and no exception. So Fran, I just want to thank you on behalf of all those who participated. The feedback that I took today was very, very positive. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I'd like to add, I was with a parent of a Middlebrook student over the holidays, and she raved about Schoology. Nothing but good things to say about it, about how well it works for her, how happy she is with it. It's just, it's wonderful. She's wonderful. She couldn't say enough good things about it. So hopefully we're getting there with it. Hopefully our teachers are coming along. I'm sure they are. It's just a question of time. But this parent was just effusive about it.
Yeah, it's nice to hear. So,
yeah.
Just out of curiosity, this session that Fran put on last night, is that something that was recorded or available for future viewing?
Yes, we actually recorded, and I wanted to also thank, we had, Dr. O'Donnell, Principal Higgins, a number of others that participated in it. We recorded it, and I'm going to post it on the homepage where it says Schoology support page, so it'll be available to everyone.
Great, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So another just brief update. Some of you or all of you may be aware that, one of our staff members, Mike Gordon, who works over at Middlebrook, has been leading some of the district's effort to provide training and support to our staff as part of our efforts to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. Yesterday, our faculties across the district participated in a training session that was facilitated by 2 anti-racism trainers from CREC. CREC is the Capital Region Education Council. The training was about an hour in duration and focused on the developing of cultural competency in classrooms. That too was very, very well received by staff across the district. I had the opportunity to participate with the Middlebrook staff and was really, taken with the content as well as the input and feedback from our 2 trainers. I was appreciative of the thoughtful questions our staff have been asking. And, this is just, kind of one more step in a long list of steps that, we've been taking in our own self-education on these topics. And so Following on that, we'll have our next district equity and inclusion team meeting. That'll take place on January 6th, and we'll have an opportunity. That team hasn't met in a while, and so we'll have an opportunity just to kind of assess where we are, assess the effectiveness of the steps we've taken so far. So just brainstorm and plan some next steps, and I'll report to the board after that next meeting. Also, just before the Thanksgiving break, I had participated in a conversation that was facilitated by Genevieve Isan, and the conversation was with retired Brigadier General Dr. Stephen Zanakis, who is an adult, child, and adolescent psychiatrist currently serving at Silver Hill Hospital. We had a number of folks from the community join that conversation, including Kim Zemo, Sarah Heath from Wilton Social Services, Susan Lauricella from the library, Cindy Moser from Trackside, Denise Qualey, who works for Kids in Crisis. There's a woman present, Tara Reed from Silver Hill. She runs the Silver Hill Resilience Campaign, which I'll tell you about in just a second. And then Cantor Harriet Dunkerley from Temple B'nai Him, and Reverend Marissa Rohrback from St. Matthew's. The purpose of that conversation was to bring together a small group of representatives from organizations within Wilton and brainstorm with Dr. Zanakis some next steps in responding to questions and concerns about the welfare of our community members, both in light of the pandemic, but also in response to the tragedies experienced by our high school community. And so kind of after listening to the update that we provided, Dr. Zanakis offered how he would likely respond if he was still in the military. And what he proposed to us was this idea of a broad-based but simple campaign to raise awareness, to check in with neighbors, and also to provide opportunities for resiliency skill development. So that idea really resonated with the group, and we're kind of thinking and planning and in the midst of kind of moving forward with that idea. And so what we're talking about is launching this idea of a Wilton community campaign for caring. And the goals of that are fairly simple and straightforward. Number one, we would invite every community organization to join, and as part of that, just recommit to the efforts that are already underway that they have to reach out and connect with their various memberships and constituencies. As part of that, we would create a clearinghouse of resources and information about events and activities, again, to promote awareness across the community and help foster further connection, among every segment of our Wilton community. And then two, we would also share and disseminate information and opportunities about some of those trainings and skill development activities. Tara Reed, who is leading the Silver Hill campaign for resiliency, is leading that program, and she's offered their services. They run webinars. Many of them are free of charge. And so we would be looking to access the work that they're doing and offering it to members of our community. So we're in the kind of still the early portion of the brainstorming phase and trying to organize this. But I fully expect in the next several days, week and a half, we'll have good plans in place that I can then turn around and share with the board, and we'll be disseminating this information and opportunity across the community. And I would expect, just knowing the Wilton community will have a lot of interest in buy-in and support. And, I think it's an opportunity to really do some good for, everybody who lives here. So I'm excited about it and looking forward to getting it off the ground. All right, so my last kind of major update here. So when we get to the learning model agenda item, we'll talk, quite a bit about, COVID-19 activities. But I did want to update the board on two pieces. One, you probably read or heard yesterday, the CDC revised their quarantine guideline recommendations. So if you look at the CDC website, they're still saying, first and foremost, they recommend a 14-day quarantine, but given some certain parameters in place, communities and healthcare providers and municipalities can access and utilize shorter quarantine periods. And what they're proposing is individuals who are symptom-free can quarantine for 10 days instead of 14 days without a COVID test, and that could be shortened even further to 7 days if individuals have no symptoms and get a negative result of a COVID test. So I spoke with Barry Bogle and Chrissy Mackin about that yesterday, and Barry's response, everyone's aware of it, and so he's waiting for some directive from state level Department of Health folks, and as soon as he gets that, he'll let us know, and then we can begin to utilize that shortened quarantine period. Any questions about that? Okay, great. And so just several updates on the COVID testing front. First, you also may be aware that the town is organizing a local COVID testing site. Once that's up and running and is in place, we will go ahead and offer that opportunity to our staff, at least for the early part of it. And so that's, the district will cover the cost of that test for staff members who want to be tested once that is up and running for the first portion of the testing window. I previously reported that we were working on a couple of options to take advantage of the availability of the Binax Now antigen rapid tests that are offered to school districts by the state. These tests are intended to be utilized for students and staff members who are exhibiting symptoms. Dr. Mackin and our colleagues at Doctors Pediatric are going to serve as the provider for us for these tests. She's presently working on the logistics, but is imagining we'll have that in place fairly soon. So as soon as that's ready to go and we're ready to launch that, I'll alert the board. The last, yep, go ahead.
A month or like sometime in January?
I'm not sure. I think, my sense is, they had to do some training and, there's some steps that they have to take to get it set up. But, I didn't think that we were a long ways off. And so we were in touch today briefly about it. And, I expect that, it would be probably sooner rather than later. Yeah. The last kind of testing update I have for you, as Debbie and I had a conversation some time ago with some folks from CIC Health up in Cambridge, and one of the testing models that they were proposing was this use of surveillance testing. And so that's the idea of using testing, whether it's pooled testing or PCR testing, to just monitor COVID spread in the community. We were really interested in the pooled testing option. So I had a follow-up conversation this week with one of the associates in that group named Boris Perlovsky. And so he walked me through the logistics of pooled testing. And 3 weeks ago when we were speaking to him and his colleague, it sounded, fairly simple and straightforward and, something that we could, reasonably access. Today, after the last conversation, not so much, not insurmountable by any stretch of the imagination, but there are quite a few more hoops we have to jump through in order to take advantage of these. So what Boris reported, and I'll send this to you so you can, read about it at your leisure. So I'll just kind of summarize the conversation quickly here. But essentially, there are two labs that CIC Health works with. One is down in Memphis and the other is up in Cambridge. The Memphis lab is the one that utilizes the matrix testing that we talked about. And so the advantage of that approach, it's still a pooled test, but samples go into two separate pools. So that way, if one of those individual samples turns out to be positive, the lab can identify the individual without having to do a follow-up PCR test. So there were some real advantages to that model. In order to take advantage of that model, we have to do some things. So we have to have a physician who would be willing to provide standing orders. So that way we can take advantage of those tests. And then we also have to have a provision for reporting to the state any positive cases. That's something that Barry and his team at the local health department do right now. So I had a conversation about this with both Dr. Mackin and Barry yesterday. Dr. Mackin had suggested that she might be able to provide those standing orders for us. There's a couple of questions I have to reach back and get answered so we can kind of finalize that piece. And then with respect to reporting back to the state, that is something, working through Barry, we could probably work out. But he also had a short list of really good questions that I need to follow up on. And, he was really curious to know, more about the type of tests that they use, as well as the labs, and are these labs approved by the Connecticut State Department of Public Health. So I don't have an answer to that yet. But once I do, then we'll be able to make a final decision about whether that would be the best direction for us to move in if we were going to pursue surveillance testing. The other caution that Boris offered to me in the conversation about that particular lab, apparently the city of Memphis has a first right of priority agreement in place with that lab. And so what he said was, like right now, if we were able to take advantage of this, we'd still be at or toward the front of the line, but they're in some conversation with the city of Memphis. And if the city of Memphis scales up its testing, then we could get bumped to the back of the line. And he was not clear in the conversation when we spoke about what that meant in terms of timing. So right now, you do the testing here on site, you box it up, you FedEx it to the lab, and they suggest that we'll get results back, from within 24 hours of the time they receive the samples. And so, but with this, potential of the city of Memphis, having the first right of priority, that could impact that. So he was going to have more information about, the feasibility and the guarantee of the timeline sometime around the first of the year. So that was, part A, and I apologize. I know it's a lot of information. The other pooled testing opportunity that this company uses is with Broad Labs, and they don't do matrix testing at Broad Labs. It's just straight sample testing. And so what that means is you put samples together, you test them as a single unit. And if there is a positive case within that sample, then all of the participants in that group have to get a follow-up test. And so when we were first talking about that, my takeaway was that could be cost prohibitive if we have to get a follow-up, PCR test because of the cost of the PCR tests. So in the conversation with Boris, he wondered if the Binax Now antigen test that we do have access to could be a reasonable proxy for a follow-up test. So I don't know the answer to that yet. And that's a question that I'm going to put in front of some folks at the State Department of Public Health, because if those are effective and could be used for that purpose, then from at least a cost perspective, we'd be in a very good place. And, CIC has a good, close relationship. They're right there in the neighborhood, and the facilitating of testing and getting results, and they have the capacity. And they anticipate they'll continue to have capacity to take our samples and then turn them around within 24 hours. So I think, good kind of forward progress, at least informationally, a few more questions that need to be asked and answered, and then, we'll have a solid recommendation about how we want to proceed. So happy to take any questions on that piece of it. I could bore you with more details about the process and testing and all of that.
Well, Kevin, clearly this is occupying a great deal of your time and effort and energy, and certainly rightfully so. I just want to comment. I looked at the numbers that you sent out the other day at the grid with the schools, the number of cases, and everything, and it's amazing. We are so fortunate and so lucky that evidently we're doing a lot of the right things, and particularly at the high school. I mean, it's and kudos to everyone who's part of that process and everyone who's doing their job, families, students, et cetera. Compared to many of the other districts around us, we're doing fine, and it's a credit to you and to your staff, and I think to the custodians, anyone and everybody who has a part in trying to mitigate this deserves a pat on the back at this point. Who's to say what could happen going forward? But as of now, I think you guys have done a remarkable job, and congrats so far. We'll just keep it up.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Kevin, thanks for all that extensive research. And yes, we can only imagine how much time that's all taking. And now we're going to be adding the much more hope here of, a possible vaccine. So that will, happily require more research and perhaps, obviously a light at the end of the tunnel for all of this.
Yeah, well,
but another layer of planning and understanding its implications.
Yeah.
So
well,
thanks for keeping on top of everything, and also thanks for so much for paying attention to other crucial and important aspects going on in our district in terms of social emotional needs. So thank you for leadership there, and we'll look forward to further reports on the equity work that's being done on the faculty end. So thank you.
Yeah. My vote would be after the frontline healthcare workers, the elderly, the next in line for the vaccine would be teachers.
Mhm.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. And it'll all be about the timing. So, but yes, absolutely. It a lot of potential, and hopefully happy that all the best wishes in terms of timing work out. Okay, Kevin, I hate to keep you talking. Oh, wait, I guess we have committee reports. I'm not sure if there were any committee meetings between our last meeting. I don't think so. Okay. Kevin, while you were doing all your work, I was watching Christmas movies and eating too much turkey. So
ops did not meet. We're meeting next Thursday. Okay. The ops committee did not meet. We're scheduled for next Thursday.
Okay, great. Thanks. Okay. So Kevin, I hate to keep you talking, but now it's time for your goals.
Yeah, no, I think the whole agenda is mine for the most part here. All right, I'm going to share the screen, and I'll just walk you through a few slides, and we can just go from there. You would think I would have this down, right? I lost you all. Okay, so you've seen this before. This document really captures, the work that we had done over the last several years. First in describing both a vision and a mission, as well, naming our values, promises, and then describing, and it's still very much in draft form because we didn't have the opportunity to complete it last year, what we're calling our portrait of the graduate. And I offer it to you tonight because the aspirations that are described here really are the bedrock and the foundation from which we operate and we plan and we take our direction. And so even in the midst of a global pandemic, we still believe that, it's our job to inspire and prepare all of our students to be meaningful contributors to a globally interdependent society. And we also still believe that we need to be guided by expert, rigorous instruction and have a curriculum that focuses on our learners and create opportunities for our children to pursue their goals and aspirations in service to the broader community. So I just offer that to you, to kind of anchor back to, these ideals that are important to us as an educational community, important to me personally. And as we talk about, goals and next steps, we ought to be able to point backwards to, what we agreed on as our, shared aspirations for our kids. Right. And then, along those same lines, several years ago, we had come to agreement about what are our, big levers in terms of, how we want to grow our practice in service to our kids. And so, the district adopted a couple of theories of action. And a theory of action is basically, it answers the question how we're going to go about, achieving our mission and our vision. And so the thrust of our theories of action were really around developing this model of personalized learning and equipping our staff through professional learning and support to do the very best work that they're capable of doing. Within that, we also place primacy on the role of performance assessment. And so performance assessment is important because it is a different pathway for kids to demonstrate what they know and can do. Moving beyond that, we named several kind of broad areas that we continue to want to reinforce. And so looking to the right of this document, it has been and it remains today our chief focus to develop the social and emotional well-being of our kids and to foster the connectedness and the skills to connect so they can be healthy, productive members of our community. And so we've had over the last couple of years, lots and lots of conversation around the connectedness data, the efforts to improve that work, the work and the training around ruler. So all of those pieces continue to be in play today. Again, very broadly, we also have been, refining our practices around using the principles of universal design. And, when I think about kind of where we are in terms of this pandemic environment, one of the gifts that we've been given is the opportunity to utilize digital platforms, which are really enabling us to, further, meet the aspirations of universal design for learning. And so being able to interact with kids in different ways and customize opportunities for them to access their learning. We've really grown a ton over the last 8 months with respect to that work. But that continues to live as a very kind of broad strategy. Again, continuing the slow, deep work of designing and implementing performance assessments, and then keeping our eyes on the ball with respect to student achievement. Again, harkening back to the development of the portrait of the graduate, within the realm of academic skills, we also talk about 21st century skills and what are those, what's the equipment kids need to be really successful as they move beyond our schools. And so, the cognitive development skills of, being able to inquire, interpret, communicate effectively, et cetera. All of that work is layered, very deeply in our curriculum at this point across the district. So we keep an eye on that. And then before I transition into the kind of really specific, concrete goals for this year, I think it's important to have that broad backdrop and just name again that we haven't lost sight of, what we've laid out as our aspirational targets. But I wanted to just take a minute. And I know, you all know this because you're living this right alongside me, but I just think in setting up the conversation, it's important to name again, this has been an unbelievably challenging school year. And I don't think one thing about it that hasn't been challenging. Saying that, I have been able to take some stock and look backwards, and I do feel very good about the plans we've developed. We're seeing evidence daily of the effectiveness of those plans and those decisions. So I think, we can all celebrate that good work. We also continue to walk a tightrope, and this is something, it's going to be the next piece of the conversation, about what model are we in, and, how do we know it's the right model, and, what's going to force us to change. To me, that's a daily tightrope, and that's where I spend the vast majority of my time trying to better understand that, and then work with my colleagues here across the district and work with all of you to ensure that we have the evidence and the data to make really good decisions in service to our kids and families. But it's, I think, walking a tightrope is a very apt description. As you know, and we talk about every time we meet, the goals that you established and I'm working to implement really place health and safety first. And we've honored that commitment with each decision we've made around our learning models and the adaptations we've been forced to make. as we continue to do that, we also know that we have competing perspectives and competing demands, and those competing demands are amplified in this environment. But we come together and we work through it. You know, I think thinking about all of this, as you know, we've gotten into this part of the year. It's helpful to step back and identify the reality that our teachers and our students are settling into an entirely new instructional routine. You know, for us in a K-12 school system, this notion of hybrid learning really didn't exist for us. And so, you know, we're in the middle of it. We are refining it. I heard Jory told me a great story today about a colleague over at Middlebrook who, you know, Jory, well, he's using multiple cameras in his classroom now, and really, you know, again, just trying to provide this really rich experience for his kids. And so, you know, we weren't even thinking about that, you know, 10, 11 months ago. And so, you know, to look at how far we've come and to look at the way, you know, so many of our staff members are adapting and innovating and trying to make the experience as rich as we can, knowing that it's brand new, is really inspiring. And so, you know, I look at examples like that. I look at the decisions we're making. I look at the data that we have, and you know, it just leads me to this understanding that, you know, we really are, as a school district, you know, under your leadership as a board, we are effectively managing in this pandemic environment, and I don't think that's a small thing. I think we can really we can celebrate that. You know, as Glenn was just describing, we've had, you know, comparatively fairly low transmission numbers. You know, I was monitoring across the region and was under the impression that ours had been, you know, until recently among the lowest. They may still be, I haven't checked in a while, but again, I just think it speaks to this partnership and collaboration with the town, the work and the direction, you know, provided by Barry Bogle and Chrissy Mackin. And then, you know, our capacity to respond as we learn of cases and contact trace and require quarantining. So, you know, to me, all of that is very good. As you know, a few weeks ago, you know, unfortunately, given what was happening at Cider Mill, that school had to transition to full remote learning. Today, we transitioned back. On both ends, the transition was seamless. And you look at that, and you know, again, to me, it's great evidence that the models that we planned for and that we implemented and then adapted are working very, very well. And so, you know, instruction wasn't interrupted. The kids, you know, picked up today where they left off yesterday. And, you know, when they had to transition to full remote learning, there really wasn't any kind of disruption to the learning. And so when you step back from that and you think about what we're trying to accomplish, and in the midst of this crazy time, the fact that we're able to really ensure continuity of learning, you know, that's a major accomplishment. So I'm really happy to see how well that's unfolded, because when we were first planning, you know, truly, it was all new. We had no idea. So all of that being said, you know, nothing is perfect anywhere, you know, and we are still in this, you know, mode of discovery and adaption. So, you know, we need to continue to look at, you know, some of those pinch points. One of the pinch point areas that we have is with the remote learning model at Miller Driscoll. We've gotten, you know, a number of questions, not an overwhelming number, but a number of questions about the sizes of those groups and, you know, the extent to which teachers are able to effectively work with those kids in those models, and the challenges that we face in terms of managing the temporary remote learners, because the model is so different. So we have to continue, and we are, you know, focusing on that. We'll talk about that a little bit more later here in the evening. We need to continue to refine the hybrid instructional model. And then, you know, as kind of going back to where I started, we really need to continue to ensure that we're connecting and engaging with all students, and, you know, not only focusing on their social and emotional well-being, but also really targeting the learning gaps and working to close those. You know, this is just as I was putting this together, you know some of the successes, but I think it's just worth looking at for a second. So, the amount of planning that we did from April to August, I think is paying off. We have, 3 different models, and we've seen evidence of being able to transition effectively through those models at most of our schools. Again, contact tracing, which, if you'd asked us what that was back in, I don't know, January, February, I don't know that anyone would have been able to define it. But we have, I think, very good, robust, and efficient contact tracing protocols that people on this call with you spend a lot of their days, many days, and have over the last 2 months engaged in that work. And so that's brand new work for our school administrators, but they do it well, and they do it at all times of the day and night, all week long. And so, it's important to name that as well. And, again, thinking about just the pandemic response, we've designed school spaces, implemented procedures, protocols, all with the intention of promoting the health and safety of our students and staff. And I think, as Debbie and Glenn pointed out, the numbers are revealing, evidence of the effectiveness of that work. We've instructed new instructional models, we've adapted new technology. We are, are really, I think, living with a clear understanding that the environment is fluid. And so, we're responding accordingly. And that's, again, just thinking about how school systems have operated, the need to be flexible, fluid, and adaptable, was something I think we aspired to years ago. Well, we live it today. Out of necessity, we've had to improve our communications, and we have almost a nightly at this point with respect to COVID. But we've gotten some good feedback about the quality of the communication, the routine of the communication, and so that's been a very good outcome so far as well. And then thinking about our kids, again, even in this environment. We have been able to serve them, both instructionally in the classrooms, but we've also, through the creativity and ingenuity of our staff and parents, we've been able to provide other opportunities as well. And so we have, virtual clubs and activities running. We were able to host a virtual fall play this year, and remarkably, we completed a fall sports season. So yeah, all of those things, I think, speak to just, the tremendous effort made by so many of the folks here in the Wilton Public Schools. So all of that's my preamble. So what is it that we continue to focus on this year? As you know, for years, we've tried to categorize goals into 4 broad goal areas. So one is whole child, the second is student outcomes, third is fiscal accountability, and then the 4th is teaching and learning. And in this year, we've added a 5th, the pandemic response. So for this year, what we're focusing on really under that kind of umbrella of whole child is the mental health and well-being of students, and really ensuring to the extent that we are able to, that our kids are feeling connected and engaged with our school community. Having the tragedies we had at the high school, having a student commit suicide, really calls to the fore the importance of those community connections. And so that is, for very good and obvious reasons, a major focal point for us. It has been and will continue to be as we move forward. Related to that is the need to focus on those community members who are trauma impacted. And people respond to trauma in different ways. But in thinking about how we create safe environments and help students be more available for learning, we also have to have supports and people and programs in place to help individuals, whether they're adults or kids, be able to effectively process that trauma and work through it. And so, we're paying attention to that. With respect to student outcomes, those are really academic outcomes. And, it has been our focus and continues to be our focus in the areas of literacy and mathematics. Specifically, in literacy, we're really, targeting some of the good work that's underway and enhancing that work at our early childhood grades. And so with early reading and specifically around the development of phonics and phonemic awareness and the implementation of some new diagnostic tools to help us, better understand where kids are and, what gaps they might have so we can respond and ensure that all of our kids are coming out of Miller Driscoll and Cider Mill being, really strong, proficient readers. And then in the area of mathematics, that's a conversation, too, we've had, very recently. And, when we compare our reading and math achievement, our math achievement lags. And so we've got, lots of pieces in play here to improve our student math achievement. But, thinking specifically about this year, Chuck and his team with Trudy, continue to work on that. And we have a couple of programs we'll be coming forward with to propose and really targeting, specific enhanced supports for, some of our kids to ensure that, as they move out of Middlebrook and into high school, they really are, ready for the upper level math classes. Under the topic of fiscal accountability, when I'm not worrying about the pandemic, I'm worrying about the budget. And so one of my chief responsibilities, and we have good people around it, is to manage our 2021 budget and try to limit cost overruns. I think we have a good team and a good set of processes in place, and we've had good budget and fiscal discipline over time. This year is extraordinary because it's the first in kind of my career where we've had these extraordinary unbudgeted expenditures, and so we're carrying an overrun. We've planned for that early on, with the cooperation of the town and the Board of Finance, and so we'll manage it. But things can, get away from us pretty easily if we're not paying attention. And so, we're paying very close attention to our budget. I know, Ann Lenz is shaking every tree she can find to try to get the reimbursements that we're entitled to. And, we're all, kind of waiting with bated breath, hoping that the federal government and FEMA will follow through on some of their early commitments to provide the support not only to our school district, but to so many others across the country, because we're all, sitting similarly in the expenditures we've had to make to respond to the COVID pandemic. So managing the budget this year and making sure that we close out the year in the best position possible is a chief area of focus. As part of that, we continue to partner in dialogue with, both the selectmen and First Selectwoman Vanderslice, as well as the Board of Finance. And they've been, good partners, and they certainly understand the need and the situation we find ourselves in. So, we continue to partner with them. And then, kind of the last big piece under fiscal accountability, in addition to managing this budget, we're also well into planning the next budget, the budget for fiscal 22. And so, we're looking to, based on the feedback we got from the Board of Finance, we're looking to manage our needs and, come forward with a budget that's somewhere between being relatively flat to no more than 3% as an increase. And so those numbers are still very preliminary at this point. We're in budget development, but kind of given where we are and what we're planning, I feel confident that, we'll be able to achieve that goal. And then the last piece here in terms of teaching and learning, as I said a moment ago, our kids and teachers are, operationalizing a brand new instructional model. And so, we need to continue to support them in every way we're able to, with respect to their instructional practice in this blended environment. And so, Fran's work last night is an example. We'll continue to do that and working through the administrators and our coaches and, technology specialists. We're committed to providing as much support as we can to help them be as successful as they can in that model. And then the last piece, not news to anybody, but we've had an eye on our efforts to promote diversity, inclusion, and equity, and we're taking small but really important steps forward every single day on that work, and we continue to have that as an area of focus this year. Great. I'll stop. I know that's a word salad that you've all heard from me, but I did, break these down into individual pieces. So if it's helpful, I can, just advance through a couple of slides and give you a little more detail, or I'm happy to just stop talking for a minute and take some questions or some feedback if you have it.
Okay. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, Kevin, I think that this is all well and good. And I really think in light of the current situation, you guys have really done a remarkable job. But as I listen to you, the thought comes to my mind, we talk, in particular as it relates to the whole child. What about the whole teacher? We get emails on a fairly regular basis from a number of teachers who are distraught, who are troubled, who have great fear about the whole COVID situation, the tasks that they're given. And I would challenge you to think about what we do, or is there a way to address and focus somewhat at some point and in some manner on our teachers to help them as they struggle through the same thing that our students are struggling through. And I don't see that here. And I ask that, I just put that forward to you as something to think about and maybe get back to us with, because I think we have a number of teachers out there who are really struggling the same way our students are struggling. And I think we should try and develop some way of helping them. Okay, that's it.
I appreciate that. And so I would just say, kind of initially as a first response, the fact that I didn't name, the whole teacher or, the support teachers doesn't suggest that, we don't have quite a bit underway.
Sure. Listen, I'm absolutely sure about that. And I just bring it up as a point, not to lose the focus, not to lose that as part of our process and what we're trying to do to help everyone, not only our students, but our teachers who are struggling too. Okay.
Yeah, I really do appreciate that comment, Glenn. And we know, and I think, both, within each of the individual buildings, through the administrators and others, there are good, support networks. But, I would also say, at the district level, the work that Maria is doing, her team, is absolutely, just critical in trying to, help and work with teachers. And, the example I would offer to you is, the approach that we've taken. We've had a lot of folks, whether they're, teachers or other, come forward and, as you just described, express a lot of concern about, coming to school and working in the environment. And there are lots of, other challenges that, have been present in their lives because of the pandemic. And so, we've been, challenged about how to, best support so many different people. But the tack that we've taken is to, kind of one, be open to individuals' unique circumstances, and, try to avoid, blanket responses where we can avoid those, and work with individuals to try to, help them manage their own needs, so that they can, do their job and, feel good about doing it. And so, I think the accommodations that, we've been making for people as appropriate with relation to remote work is one example.
Okay, I would just like to see that as part of your objectives, specified or as part of this presentation, that our teachers are also vitally important to us, and they are at the core of what we do. And we need to be responsible. And I'm not saying that we're not at all. Please don't get me wrong. But it's just something I think we need to highlight and make it part of what we're about.
Okay, so perhaps just verbalize it. Make it. I think you can put into words all the efforts that have. Right. Been going on to support staff, and help everyone through this environment. Yeah. So, let's just make it more public, perhaps, or more visible.
Yeah, that would be great. It's just to let them know that we care. Let them know that we're here for them. You know, and not that we aren't. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that at all. But I think it needs to be.
No, I think along the way, there's been tremendous effort, you know, the same thing around obviously the students.
Right.
But I just think we need to, you know, list it the same way you have on some of these other slides.
Yeah.
Kevin, I think there's been a tremendous amount of effort between the HR department and working with the faculty and being as responsive as possible with schedule and staff development and all of that. So we just need to just summarize it, perhaps.
I'm happy to. Yeah, you got it.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
Sure. Other questions, comments, feedback?
No, I think this reminds us that while much of what we're doing this year is, you know, in relation to or driven by COVID, that it's still the student learning at the center of it, learning and development. And so I think it's great to sort of, you know, remind us that, you know, the district is doing its, you know, its vital mission while, you know, or in the midst of a pandemic. And it's been challenging, yes, and struggles, yes, but there's also been a tremendous amount of good news and even some open doors. As someone who has been in education forever, the idea about flexibility and adaptability, Kevin, I liked it when you said it's something that we've always aspired to. And if you had said, you know, we're going to make all these changes in, you know, 8 months, you know, in a normal world, everybody would have said, yeah, right. So, you know, we have done it. And so I just think that that's a tremendous takeaway. And, you know, for as much as we do not like or want to ever keep hybrid learning, you know, as our major mode of instruction, I think there will be times in the future for some kids and some situations where it may prove to be a help. You know, for kids who are having access issues in a traditional way, they may have challenges there, but we've opened some doors for how to access learning in slightly different ways. And I think that that will pay off in the long run, perhaps in ways we don't yet know.
So then I think, you know, just what I'll do, I'll send you the detailed slides here, and then, you know, you can look at them. And, you know, what I've done is just, you know, kind of restated you know, the goal areas and just describes.
Okay. Yeah. And we did such a good, thorough math workshop. And then I know that we sent in some follow-up questions to the math. And I know Chuck and his team were working on getting us, you know, sort of, you know, all sorts, some of the data that we had asked as follow-up to the workshop. So I think if we could highlight that as well, and you probably have in some of this later slides, but let's not lose sight of the math work. And the sooner you can bring us your proposals to support this year's math work, the better.
Sure. Yeah, you have that. And, you know, we were talking about, you know, when to target the next math workshop, because we had some, you know, some work that we wanted to finish from the previous one, but also, you know, get into the weeds about those responses. So we had originally, when Chuck and I were talking about this, either at the end of last week or early this week, we were as a follow-up opportunity, you know, somewhere in the very early part of the January. But I think, you know, just understanding the need to put some proposals in front of you. Perhaps we can send you some proposals in advance of that, and then we'll target a workshop for, you know, the first or second week of January, and then you'll have those in advance, and we can kind of dive right into just, you know, the questions that you'll have as you're following up with those.
Right. Now, you had, you know, some very preliminary ideas about providing support for math. So the sooner, I think you just said it, but the sooner we could see that, the better. I know that everyone's been reading, you know, sort of national research about student achievement during this kind of pandemic year. and that some of the national reports, not Wilton specific, but sort of more global statements, show that math is a vulnerable area in this environment.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There was a really provocative article on Education Week this week on that topic.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be great if we could get some proposals in advance of the meeting. So then when it comes time to the meeting, we're kind of looking at the proposals themselves and being able to, sort through what we think are together is the best way to move forward. So we can move forward within short order after that and not, still have a couple, more work to do and then follow up and then perhaps implement.
Yeah. Okay.
And then your slide towards the beginning on the a pandemic and sort of looking forward to the remote learning model at Miller Driscoll, et cetera. I would just like to, and again, I don't want to push, but I don't want to close this off to the idea of continue to look for ways to augment the, live instructional opportunities, whether it's if and when the numbers come down. We had talked earlier on about, would it be possible to start bringing Middlebrook back more? We want to always keep that possibility there as soon as, health and safety allow. And we've talked about, are there alternate uses of Wednesdays? So let's not lose sight of, sort of augmenting as much live instructional opportunity as there may exist this year.
Sure, of course. More specific information and feedback that I was saving for the learning model update portion here. But yeah, those are front and center as well.
Thanks. Okay, so is it time to move to the learning model update then, do you think? Any other comments on? Okay, so let's move to that.
Great. You're going to be sick of hearing my voice. All right, so just it's kind of in keeping with recent tradition here. I'll just share with you first kind of where we are as a community in terms of COVID numbers. So, as you know, we pay close attention to the COVID Act Now website, and then each Thursday about 4 o'clock, the State Department of Public Health updates its own information. The COVID Act Now information is a little more dynamic. The State Department of Public Health generally lags 2 weeks. So as of this afternoon on the COVID Act Now website, the average daily new case rate for Fairfield County is 56.6. So that's fairly extraordinary. The infection rate is 1.04%, and the positive test rate is 10.9%. Those numbers had increased from a couple of weeks ago, and just tracking them over the last several days, there was a pretty substantial spike. They were above 60 for a few days, and then they had dropped into the mid 40s over the last several days, and now they're trending north again, and so they're in the mid 50s. Earlier today, the Connecticut State Department of Public Health reported for Fairfield County an average daily new case rate of 52.5. That's up from 49.3 2 weeks ago when last we spoke about it. The percent test positivity is 8%. That was up from 5.9% 2 weeks ago. The data for Wilton is, in terms of daily new case rates, 27.6. That's actually trended down from the last report, which was 31.8 2 weeks ago. So in talking with Barry about that, he was just, as he kind of tracks numbers, what he had suggested was, we are going to see, a short decline, for the next couple of days, but then he's expecting an uptick again as we see the results of, people's travel activities coming home. In terms of our current school district numbers, Right now, we have 6 staff members across the district who are COVID positive and are currently isolating. 4 from the high school, 1's from Middlebrook, 1's a district level staff member. We have 5 students who are currently confirmed COVID positive and are isolating. 1's at Middlebrook, 1's at Cider Mill, 3 are at Miller Driscoll. In terms of staff who are quarantining because of their close contact, we have a total of 32 across the district. So at the high school, there's 13. Middlebrook is, we have 4, 3 at Cider Mill and a dozen at Miller Driscoll. And then in terms of the numbers of students who are currently quarantining, we have a total of 83 students who are quarantining, 23 from the high school, 7 from Middlebrook, 4 from Cider Mill, and then 49 from Miller Driscoll. All those numbers you can find on our website. We're updating this COVID tracker now daily. So a couple of weeks ago, on November 18th, we were at 206 students quarantining and 52 staff, and we had 16 students confirmed positive and 3 adults at that time. So the numbers are definitely in the more recent days are moving in the right direction. So we feel pretty encouraged about that. In speaking with both Chrissy and Barry, the consensus recommendation is that we keep our current models in place through at least the new year. And so, that would mean both Miller Driscoll and Cider Mill, we continue the in-person model of having them come in 4 days a week. The middle school and high school, we keep on hybrid. And then Wednesdays for that same time period, we keep remote. And so, in that conversation, they both concurred that all of the strategies we're using seem to be effective, including the remote Wednesday. And so, we're not seeing lots of cases of in-school transmission. And, so that leads us to try to keep these models in place and keep our kids in school as much as we're able. What else do I want to tell you about that? I think just as and probably bears repeating, the situation it's dynamic, it's fluid, and it can change hour to hour. So we should continue to be prepared to shift models in a moment's notice if necessary. With the respect to the recommendation about Wednesdays, that remote day is part of our collection of mitigation strategies. And as I've reported to you previously, Jose Figueroa and our custodial staff place a lot of importance on having that day to do additional cleaning. As well, we've talked about the opportunity to have the air turnover, throughout the day when no one's in the building. So, Jose hasn't moved on that. He does think at this point it's worth holding on to, and Chrissy and Barry certainly concur for the time being. I think the challenge, that we and so many other communities face here too, in managing our models, is having enough in-person staff to effectively deliver instruction. And so we do see, in that regard, the Wednesday remote days is beneficial too, because we do have staff who are quarantining and teaching from home. And so on those days when we're working remotely, we're not scrambling to try to provide in-person coverage so we can have an adult in the room where, the teachers might not be present. So there are a number of benefits. Staff absences are a challenge. We continue, not only are we impacted by our local quarantines, but, we're also impacted by issues that occur in neighboring towns. And so, most recently, a number of towns, to the north and northeast of us have transitioned from, whatever model they were into full remote learning. And we have a number of folks who live in those communities and whose children attend those schools. And so, we have a fair number of folks who have been, hard pressed to find childcare and have had to take days so they can care for their own kids because, the in-person schooling hasn't been available. And so you take that piece, you take quarantining. We also have, as we've advised, staff members who are erring on the side of caution and taking sick days because they don't want to run the risk of infecting others. So, we have a fair number of staff out every single day. And, to date, we've been able to cover it. And, we continue to hope that we're able to cover it. But it is one of those variables that we look at, carefully, every night before we go to bed and every morning as we get up. And, we have, secretaries in each of the building who are working magic to make those coverages available so we can continue to keep our buildings open. But I think if anything is going to, force us to remote in a school building, it's going to be a shortage of staff before it's any kind of, in-school COVID transmission. So, just thinking forward, I think it's important we take the advice of Chrissy and Barry, and we just commit to having these models in place through the remainder of December. And then, we re-examine the first week of January, and, we kind of follow our process. We look at, what our numbers look like. And, we make a decision at that time. Going back to, Debbie, the question or comment you made about Middlebrook, we have been working to set that school up so we can welcome kids back to that school. And so at this point, all of the 6th and 7th grade classrooms are outfitted with ample furniture. So, we could bring those kids back. We're still short on some furniture in the 8th grade. I was hoping that, we could configure, enough of the different size tables we have to be able to use that furniture to accommodate the 8th grade. But, the geometry and the space limitations just don't line up in our favor. So we have to get some more desks for the 8th grade classroom, but we'll have those in place in the very early part of January. So if we find ourselves in a position where we can bring more students back at that school, we'll be ready to do it. And so I think, that's something, Jory's going to have to, work with the staff and make sure that the staff is all prepared. But I'm sure that, this is a possibility people have been thinking about for some time. In terms of, how we go about that, I think, first we'll continue to watch the numbers, listen to the advice of our medical advisors. And, if we get the all clear, we would move as quickly as we can to, bring students back. And, what I'm imagining is, probably not dissimilar to the way we repopulated Cider Mill. But, we do over a very short period of time, maybe, a week or 4 days, but we do a phased return. So, start with 6th grade on a given day, they come back, the next day, 7th grade, perhaps the next day, 8th grade. So we do have, I think, a good plan in place. And like I said, by early January, the entire building will be ready to go. And so we should be able to achieve that if the COVID data lines up to support it. The high school is a different story altogether. And just the logistics do not support at this point getting all of the kids back in the building together simultaneously, given the space restrictions we have, as well as the schedule that we're operating under. So I wouldn't have the same recommendation for the high school at the early part of the year, even if the COVID numbers changed. But what I've asked Bob and Don and their staff to do is to continue to look at some different opportunities. So, can we get in a single grade? Can we get in 2 grades? Is there a schedule shift that we should explore to accommodate more kids? But I think, when you're talking about a full return at that school, we have to weigh differently the benefits and the drawbacks of doing that. So, at this point, it wouldn't be my first recommendation, but I think as we kind of move forward in time here, we can have some good thinking about, again, if the numbers permit, how we bring some more students back and which students we would be able to bring back. And then the last piece is just on the Wednesdays, and again, I would just say, right now, this strategy seems to work and it's effective in the environment that we're in. But, if the environment changes, if numbers come down, then I think, we'd all be poised to reevaluate that and then just again weigh out the benefit versus the drawback. And if it really made sense to try to bring kids in some fashion on that day, then we would certainly take advantage of that.
Kevin, I think that makes sense. I really do. I think we've been fortunate so far, and to stay the course that we're on, although it's not ideal, it does make sense to stay this way at least through December and look at it again come January and maybe mid-January after we get through the holiday output or whatever is going to happen over the holidays. But I think we're okay. Look, we would all love to have all the kids back, no doubt about it, but it just doesn't make sense to try and do it at this point. So I think you're on the right track, and I would support that. Let's stay the course. It's working for us. It's not ideal, but our teachers every day become more and more accustomed to what we're doing and how we're doing it and what they need to do. So let's just stay where we are right now. I think you're right. I agree wholeheartedly.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
There are two other pieces that I wanted to just raise as part of this, but I'll wait unless there are other questions or comments or feedback about everything I've presented.
Well, I think it's great that should the numbers change and should the medical advice change, that Middlebrook is ready. Not quite sure what furniture you need, but I'm hoping that's not a huge obstacle. So I think that's great in terms of the planning is there. You know what you need to do, and you could do it in short order if the numbers and the medical advice come in differently than they are now. I think we were all expecting, given all the national news and the state news, that staying the course right now, through the holidays is the sensible, safe, most healthful approach to take. So thanks again. And also thank you for planning ahead and looking at Middlebrook and maybe keeping the door open a little bit about Wednesdays. If the high school is not able to effect a full open, that, can we grab some time, perhaps not right away, but at some point from Wednesday?
Yeah, it's a good point. Any other comments or questions on those pieces? Okay, so just briefly, so today we welcomed the kids at Sutter Mill back, and after 2 weeks of remote learning, and I know I said it at the outset, but the transition was seamless. I called over there in the middle of the day, and people were really excited to hear the voices of children in the school, and teachers were in a very good place. But from an instructional perspective, I really just think we have to just really respect the fact that these folks they transitioned. They were in, they were out, and they were in, and there was no problem. Jen, I want to just give you a minute to echo that, because I really do think it's a very big deal.
I think about where we were last spring and the amazing amount of work that Fran, the coordinators, but our teachers, and just how their ability to work in those team structures that we have. And, not only is it just amazing that as a school community, we can go in and out, but we've had whole classrooms on quarantine and, within the team still be able to have teachers teaching remotely and everybody still engaged. And it's just the fluidity of having Schoology as the platform to kind of ground the learning has been amazing. And it doesn't come without its challenges, but I just, really want to take an opportunity to thank Fran, who has been the biggest cheerleader of all of this, and our LLC staff and our teachers, because the work that they've all been putting into this has really supported our kids being able to do this. So
yeah, thanks, Jen.
Yeah, that's great news. Congratulations. And the kids must have been so happy to be back.
Oh my gosh, yes.
As a mom of a third grader, she was very happy to be.
Yes. Teachers are happy too, man. It's a heck of a lot easier to teach when they're in front of you.
But I have to say, as a mom also seeing it happen, I know that the instruction that she's getting when she's at home and the instruction that she's getting in the school, like when she's in the building, the quality and is just tremendous in both ways and in both places. So
Our teachers are amazing. I can't say enough.
Yeah, that's great. No, I had my 2 fourth graders were 10 minutes early for the bus this morning.
That's a telling sign.
So the last piece I wanted to get into under this topic was really just about the remote learning model that's in place at Miller Driscoll, because that's a very different approach. And when Kathy and her team set it up, we knew at the outset, what the advantages were as well as what the disadvantages would be. And so, we've received some feedback, and it's not overwhelming by a long shot, but there have been some questions raised about the numbers of kids in those classes and how effectively our teachers are able to manage those numbers. And so, as the model Kathy put in place, she's got a lead kind of classroom teacher, and then 2 of the coaches are working with that teacher. So kids come together in a larger group, they receive a mini lesson from a teacher, and then they do breakout groups with the other 2 teachers as a way to just manage the instruction and manage the size of the classes. So the benefit of that model is, those kids are assigned to a group of teachers, and that's their group of teachers. And then the rest of the staff that's working with students in person doesn't have the added challenge of managing students remotely. And that was, in fairness to Kathy and what she's trying to accomplish, early on when we were planning these models, that's not what I was thinking about for Miller Driscoll, but, she was absolutely right to, protect and segregate her staff that way because the needs of our youngest learners are so different. And I don't think it would have been fair or effective to put those teachers in the situation where they were trying to teach really critical literacy skills in a hybrid environment. And so, I support the approach. I think, our work now is to really continue to assess, how effectively it's working, and to be open about the challenges that some of the kids may be having, and find, good ways to support those kids to make sure that they're gleaning as much as possible from the experience. The related question about this model that we want to get into a little bit too is how do we best accommodate our temporary remote learners? And so that's where, very different from the middle school or the high school or cider mill for that matter. Those kids are attached to a class and they can kind of come in and come out, and the teachers can manage it because of those models. Different at Miller Driscoll. And, as we're thinking about the next couple of weeks and what could, what we could see in terms of kids, needing or parents wanting remote learning, this model is certainly not as amenable to those kinds of changes. And so I want to just kind of have Kathy kind of weigh in here a little bit, because it's important, I think for the board to understand, there are absolutely challenges, but, the model for many, I think, is working. And, Kathy works very closely with those teachers. And so, she's getting feedback from them. They're certainly in touch with their parents, and, they're obviously with the kids every day. So I think they've done a lot of adjusting and refining. And then Kathy and her team as well have come up with some different approaches to try to respond and accommodate those families who need to also temporarily quarantine. So Kat, do you want to kind of start, if you don't mind, just with your own observations? You were in some of those classrooms recently, and what did you see, and how did it go? And then kind of what's your own thinking in terms of what the next steps are for us in terms of the evolution?
Sure. I think first off, we designed the model knowing that the number of students in the remote classes might kind of ebb and flow. And so that's why we put a team of teachers in there. So that's first and foremost. Second is, again, like Kevin said, we've gotten some feedback, but for the most part, the majority of people are very happy. All of the people are very happy with the teachers and the coaches and all of the people who are doing the instruction. Some of the people who even had questions, though, about the number of students in the class wholeheartedly agree that our model of a teacher teaching students who are remote only, or a teacher teaching students who are on site only, is the best model. So even though they might have some issues with numbers or things like that, they all agree that that is the best way to do it. So again, if you look at kind of a typical day, and it does mirror as much as possible a classroom, you know, if there's the classroom teacher and an instructional coach in the area of humanities, one of them will teach the mini lesson to the entire group. And again, you have to understand a mini lesson for first grade is about 7 minutes, 8 minutes maybe. And then they do divide up into breakout rooms and into other small groups. So it's very similar to what happens in a classroom. And if you think, you know, first and second grade have a bigger number of students. So it's, you know, about 30 students in both of those classes. So when you divide up between the two teachers, you know, the ratio is, you know, about a teacher to 15 students. I did say it would be really great if somebody, and this is a great idea for all of you out there listening, if somebody could invent a tool, a technological tool, Fran, this is all you could do this, where a teacher could meet with a small group while still being able to watch what the other children are doing. That would be amazing. But right now we can't do it. There's not a tool that would let us do that. So that does mean that you have kids, you know, in a breakout room or working with partnerships or small groups. And again, they can check back in. So that's, you know, that's what the day looks like. And it, you know, kids are in and out, kids get different levels of support. And even if I talk to parents, you know, it might be, well, you know, Kevin needs a little bit more support in writing, but you know what, in reading, he's great. I mean, he can do all of those pieces. So the teams are amazing at, you know, providing instruction, at planning together. As an administrative team, we have meetings set up with them every 2 weeks. We do our like remote team meetings and talk about, you know, things that might be challenging, how we can support those teams, especially we just, you know, completed parent teacher conferences. So obviously, you know, if you're the teacher of record and you're doing 30 conferences, then we have to look at other ways to support you. So we are looking at all of those pieces, and I do talk to Kevin a lot about the numbers. The other thing that we did do was we had teacher volunteers who created Padlets. So these are very similar to what we used last year. So they're 2-week Padlets that are basically support to the instruction that's going on, you know, kind of December, January. So some of those students who need remote instruction for just a small amount of time have that instruction asynchronously via the Padlet. And then again, because we do have remote Wednesdays, which is phenomenal for our kids, then they can still access their instruction with their classroom teacher, their assigned classroom teacher who they know on Wednesdays. So we are monitoring it. We do have some things in place. And again, we literally take it on a case-by-case basis. Dr. Cross talks to every family who requests remote instruction, whether it's for a couple of days or a couple of weeks. So, you know, so we're doing the best we can with the staff that we have. And I do have to give a shout out to the remote teams because again, they are phenomenal. They are phenomenal. So happy to answer any questions if you have any, or if that covers it, Kevin, I'll just go back to muting.
So you don't see the need or the wherewithal that would land you in a better place than you already are. I mean, it sounds amazing. Again, the flexibility of the teachers and the creativity and the different modes. And I think in Wilton, we're a bit fortunate in that we have the K2 and the 3-5 model. So we are able to kind of better target the K2 kids, and their needs are different than the grades 3 through 5. So I'm glad we went 2 slightly different roads there so we could best match the needs.
Right.
But are you seeing something that you think you're going to need, or is there something the board should be alert to?
Well, I do think it's tricky because given the numbers, it also gets tricky. Like there, like Kevin said, with staff, there are repercussions based on what happens at other schools. So when Jen's school, for example, went remote for 2 weeks, then we did have some people saying, well, if my Cider Mill child is home, then I would just like to keep my Miller Driscoll child at home, right? So that had an impact on what we do. I think the tricky part is, even if we, if we look at these classes, and even if I said to you, okay, well, you could give me you could hire another teacher for first and hire another teacher for second. Unfortunately, that would require splitting up this class, and then these children would have yet another teacher. So that is the piece that we're kind of trying to avoid, because I feel like the kids have made connections, with their remote team for that grade level. But, I don't have a crystal ball when it comes to COVID and doing this in a global pandemic. So there might be a point where, if we're keeping the rest of the school open, but we have a lot of parents who want their kids to be remote, then we may have to look at something different.
And Kathy, the Padlet solution for more of like the temporary remote needs, that instruction is sufficient to keep the kids on track and not counted absent?
Correct.
And pick up where they left off when they come back into the classroom full time?
Yep, the kids do the work, and then again, the teacher's always checking in too. So even if the teacher is teaching on site, oftentimes the teacher will, Zoom with a student who's home for a few days too, on either their planning time or their lunchtime or before or after school. So there's frequent check-ins too.
Kathy, do you have a number in mind of what's too many kids in the remote class?
Jen, that is a really good question, and a lot of people ask me that question. I don't necessarily have a number, because, like I said, I feel I don't know. I don't know. I don't have a hard and fast number. I don't. And again, some kids go in and out, so that gets a little bit tricky too. I will tell you that the numbers overall from when we brought the kids back on site 4 days, the numbers are very similar to where we started. So again, we get these kind of spikes, like I said, when with Jen's school or here and there, we get little spikes. So we were hoping the Padlet would help, but I don't have a firm number, because again, I do think it would be very difficult to transition these kiddos to yet again another new teacher. So
and there are a couple of things that we need to continue to pay attention to. I think one is the learning data that we have from our remote learners, and what kind of judgments can we make with respect to how well they're learning as a group compared to some of their in-person peers, and if that comparison tells us anything about our class sizes or the effectiveness of the instruction. And then I think the second piece that I think is really challenging for some of our kids and some of our families is just it's about the quality of the experience. And so we've heard some stories, and Kathy alluded to just a minute ago, that the teachers are utilizing breakout rooms, and so we've got little kids who are doing partner reading, and so they go into a breakout room, and those are like emergent skills. And so as a parent, if you're kind of watching that happen on on the home side, and the kids aren't fully engaged talking to each other, or they've gotten through the exercise quickly, you can I think legitimately question the value of that time. I think what's not seen is we are teaching the same skills in our classrooms, and so when kids are doing partner reading, the only difference is they're in a classroom with a teacher, and the teacher is observing. So the medium absolutely impacts the quality. And so I think this is where the last time we met, I was we need to continue to dialogue with our kids and with our parents about the quality of the experience. And so between the learning data, between the feedback we get about the quality of the experience, we just have to be open to to continuing to adjust. And so, I do have a worry that, some of our parents and maybe some of the kids feel like they're, second-class citizens. And, that was never the intention. It's not the intention. It's not the goal. We're trying to make the experience as robust as we can, given the limitations we have. And so, I think as long as we continue to focus on that, and people are open to, providing feedback, and we stay committed to, ensuring a quality of experience, it'll continue to get better over time as the kids mature into it, and as our teachers learn more.
I will say too, there's one other thing that you cannot replicate in remote instruction, which is kids being able to watch other kids. So we teach kids, if the teacher gives a direction and then you're kind of not really sure what to do, it's like, oh, what are your friends doing? And they don't have those cues. So I do think, especially for little kids, that's something that is really, really tricky, because they do pick up a lot on, oh, let me see what my peers are doing. If maybe I missed, one part of that 3-part direction or something. So that is something, again, that is very hard to replicate via remote instruction. Probably doesn't matter how old you are or what you're doing. So it's tricky.
Have you had any requests from people who signed up for full remote to perhaps move back to on-site?
Yep.
Are there any numbers floated that way?
We've had a couple kids that have come back, and then I think right now we have 3 that are pending. I think some people are waiting for for January because it's so close to the holiday, to the vacation. So we have some people though who are considering, like I said, I think we have 3 families right now who are considering coming back in January, which is fantastic.
Okay, good.
And just, have we considered, or is there a way to perhaps maybe just provide some additional support during the breakout room times? So it's kind of like there's another, perhaps like set of adult eyes, so to speak, but not the same as having an additional, splitting it up and having an additional teacher.
Yep. Dr. Smith and I talked about that actually this morning, because I said, perhaps a paraprofessional or something,
Sure.
But again, we have to look at the staff that we have. We do have, we have paraprofessionals that are assigned based on special education mandates. And so whether there's any flexibility there, we will look at it. We do have regular ed paras, but they are assigned to kindergarten. And we only have 5 this year, and we have 13 kindergarten classes. So again, 1 is remote, but spreading 5 across 12 classes, especially when the kids can't move around and it's harder to pull small groups. It's just super tricky. So I hear you, and we're looking at everybody's time, and we may be able to even do a little something different, especially on Wednesdays. But it is really tricky.
Sure. Okay.
Add on that.
All right. Anything else on the learning model update? Andrea, could you just give us, and I really mean it when I say 1 or 2 minutes, but I just wanted to check in with the students receiving special services and how you think that's going.
As always in special education, we have kids who are knocking it out of the park and kids who are struggling. Teams are working with all of them to make sure that they continue to creatively solve the problems as they exist, whether they be problems in remote learning or problems in the return to school, in kids who are coming to school. So I think all in all, the department is working extraordinarily well. The teachers are teachers and related service people and paraprofessionals and administration. They're working very hard with each and every individual kid, individual student and learner, to make sure that their needs are being met and never giving up if there's a struggle going on, which is similar to a regular year, a non-pandemic year. The 4-day students who are coming 4 days a week, those who've chosen to do that, they're doing very well. They're engaged, their teams are working very well with them. The collaborative center students from Cider Mill who stayed in during the 2-week shutdown, who came, that was a great benefit to those students who are more challenged in the remote learning environment. So they did they had continuity of care and continuity of learning. And I think that went very well. So, Genesis continues to move in and out. Genesis was, they were fully remote for a little bit too, due to a positive case as well. But they're back and doing extraordinary work. and the kids and teachers are working very strongly together in that environment. Right now, we have our community steps, our 18 to 21 program. They are currently quarantining due to a positive case. The community steps program is more challenging because obviously community learning is really quite limited right now. So we've found a million ways. We have a group of kids doing projects at Miller Driscoll. They're working with the Miller Driscoll team to do some much needed organizational work and getting some hands-on experience, work experience that way. So the team is being very creative to try to build vocational experiences and pre-vocational experiences, even in this time when the students can't go out into the community as freely as they would normally. The story is much the same with everyone else. It's a lesson in cognitive flexibility. It's a lesson in, meeting the students and families where they are, trying to solve real problems one at a time, in real time, and trying to do so while continuing to build and maintain positive relationships with our students and their families.
Okay, thank you.
Could I have a quick question, Andrea? The students that are outplaced, what contacts or what do we know about what their schools and where they are doing? And are we monitoring that in any way, shape, or form?
Yes, we monitor each of our students who is placed out of district has an in-district case manager. Okay. And then Sharon D'Angelo, Melissa Barrett, and myself, we work with the private schools. We get information when they go into hybrid or someone needs to be quarantined. So we get that information from those schools, and we monitor what's happening. We also have some of those students whose parents have chosen to be fully remote, similar to what we just talked about at Miller Driscoll. So we have a number of different iterations going on with our kids who are in outplacements.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Thanks, Andrea. Just one more question about, what about the identification process? Is that changed this year? Do we know how to do it? Are we seeing more students, fewer students, about the same number of students?
We do know how to do it, and we're continuing to work. That one of the challenges of new referrals right now, when we have people in and out in quarantine, is meeting our evaluation timelines and doing quality evaluations within that. But our teams are working very hard. We've all developed plans for how to manage the evaluation needs of students, even if the students have to go to a full remote model, and how we're going to do that. So each school has developed a plan to manage that in the event that their school has to go to full remote, and we can continue to evaluate students. Right now, this is the time of year where we start to see a dramatic uptick in new referrals to special education. And it happens across the board from Miller Driscoll all the way through the high school. Whether it's typically it's the first round of report cards that may play a role. It may be map testing that raises a level of concern. Some of the progress monitoring tools reveal some data, or our interventionists who've been working with students over a period of time are starting to wave the flag that this might be a disability that needs further evaluation. So we're seeing that. What we're not seeing right now is a major uptick that I would term as COVID related right now. But that still could present itself over the coming months, where we see students who aren't, who are starting to fall further behind, and who may have a disability, an underlying disability that needs to be evaluated and addressed. But right now, I think things are, I would term them within normal limits right now. But we're watching that very carefully and keeping an eye on the data to see where we are.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Kevin, anything else on the learning model?
No, not on this topic any further. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. The last item on the agenda are the 21-22 district goals. Kevin, I don't know, I'm just looking at our time. Do you feel comfortable starting that tonight, or what do you think?
I'll give you just a brief synopsis here. Let me
Okay, perfect.
And I'll do this in 4 minutes or less, just for the sake of everybody's attention. So, thinking forward, we're optimistic about what the future holds. Certainly, the news with the the vaccines are very encouraging. And so we're hoping that, at some point over the course of the next school year, we'll return to, quote unquote, more normal operations. So in thinking about broad goals, what's, reflected on the screen in front of you are some of our longer standing continuous improvement goals. So here's what I would say. And as we get further into the budget process, and as you, receive the budget and start to unpack it, you'll see echoes of, some of these continuous improvement initiatives reflected in the financial plan. But I think, first, just looking at the bottom of the screen, going very back to the kind of the place where we started, we want to be able to, leverage some of the lessons from the pandemic. And so, we know that when we were in, traditional schooling, the in-person, 6.5 hour day didn't work well for every kid. So we wanted, make sure that we have opportunities to better respond to those kids where our more traditional structures didn't work. And I think, we've had some good experience this year with the tools we have that we can serve those kids better. And so as a goal area, we're not going to lose sight of that at all. In fact, Chuck, Fran, and I have a conversation coming up with Marie Alcock, who you've all met. She's been working overseas, and she has a lot of lessons to offer us about school districts who are in front of us around the globe in terms of, where they are with pandemic recovery, have made substantial changes to the way they do business. And so there's a lot that we can glean from those places. So we're anxious to talk to her about that. And then, just some other kind of top line areas, again, as part of our effort, to improve our practices around diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have a minority teacher recruitment plan in place. We're looking to really refine that plan and improve, and consequently continue to diversify our staff. Reading across, in teaching and learning and special services, we're also mindful of the fact that we're not clear on, where kids will be, by the end of this year. And so needing to attend to further learning recovery. So if that's, kind of picking up on the math plans that you'll be seeing about providing supplemental support and, more enhanced intervention services for kids beyond the school day, there'll be real financial implications there. So that's something that, will be, one of our goal areas looking forward. Certainly, as Andre was just describing, continuing to really focus on and supporting our kids with complex needs in those families, and supporting them academically, that remains a clear and important goal as we look forward. And then, two, as I discussed even about this year, really making sure that we have the appropriate pieces in place to respond to, what I would describe as post-pandemic SEL needs. So, kids who are still in trauma recovery or families who are in trauma recovery, we need to have, personnel supports in place to be able to respond, because, at this point, we're just not clear what we're going to see. So we need to have provisions in place to do that. And then, the rest of, what you're seeing, many of those are some of our continuous improvement goals that, we had started to work on, and we're sidetracked because of the pandemic. And so, it's our hope that we'll be able to pick those up again and continue to just, advance the ball in terms of the broad work. But, there are other more specific, academic goals that will continue to emerge and develop. I think broadly, and I'll send this to you so you have it and you can look at it more carefully. But in thinking about, the financial plan, there'll be strong echoes of, some of this work inside that plan.
Okay. Right, yeah, that would be great if you could send that to us. Because I think as we try to build the budget or, justify the budget, that we have to have the underpinning of the goals really clear. And I personally like to sort of decide what our goals are and then build the resources that we need to support those goals. So if you could send us that draft, and then we could send you questions or suggestions. One I have that probably would have some financial implications. I didn't see facilities up there. So I don't know if there's a place to put it, but perhaps we could think about that a little bit.
Yeah.
And we can all send comments and questions for the next meeting. Okay.
Great.
Yeah, Kevin, I think there are 24 slides in that deck, and you'll get that out to us so we can, okay.
Oh, the first one, yeah. Okay. All right. And then we should comment and make suggestions on the 21-22 district goals, because again, strategically, as we move forward, as we build the resources around it in terms of the budget, we have to be satisfied that we've set our right targets. All right, any other questions or comments for the goals? Okay, so our action items are to approve recommended a couple of the new policies that we have reviewed at the last meeting. Policy 61, 62.51, student surveys. Are there any comments or questions about that?
I think it was interesting that was the front page, one of the front page articles today in the Wilton Bulletin. So the community is well aware of what we're trying to do, and I think it's very positive and a very, very good thing. And their coverage was pretty good of what we're working on. So that's good.
Right. I think this is the more global policy just in general of surveys, but it's a good reminder, Glenn, that we do need to approve that that specific student screening device that was proposed by Kim. I don't think we ever approved it.
I thought we approved it. Okay, I'll have to check. I thought we were
Yeah.
good.
I thought we did, maybe not, but I thought we did.
Well, we heard the presentation, and I just don't remember approving it, though.
Okay.
I don't think we did.
Okay.
I'll make
Yeah.
sure.
Should approve it.
Yeah, so let's make sure that gets on our agenda next week.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe we just needed the global student survey policy first, just to allow us to bring it forward.
Okay.
So anyway, let's get back to the global policy. Is there a motion for this one to approve it?
I move to approve. Do I need to give you the actual number?
61, 62.51.
61, 52.51.
62 point, yes. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Gretchen. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that's approved. And the next policy is policy 6154 on homework. Any questions, comments?
Before
Go
you
ahead,
vote,
Kevin.
there was a question that came up last week about the inclusion of time for reading as part of that homework time allotment. And so Chuck and I went back and talked about that. And so we did adjust the regulation to note that reading is included in that time allotment.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? All right, anybody want to make a motion
So moved.
to approve policy 6154? Thanks, Glenn. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Ruth. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that is approved. All right, we have our future calendar of meetings. And again, special meetings is can be added if Kevin feels the need. Lucille, any more comments from the public?
There aren't any.
All right. Okay, so thank you, everyone. And congratulations to Cider Mill for getting back to more normal. And thanks, as usual, for everyone's hard work. So thank you. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks. So thank you, and this meeting's adjourned. Good night.
Good night, everyone. Good night.
Good night.